Well, Lara Giddings, the Tasmanian economy has been struggling relative to the rest of the country. What has been the problem?
Well, we're a small state. That's the reality of it. 500,000 people means that we actually feel the effects of a change in global circumstances more quickly than other parts of Australia. So I think the high Australian dollar has certainly hurt our manufacturing industries and the mining industry, and we've felt that. It's a reality of it. But what's important for us is the foundations that we have been building to try to help give Tasmania more certainty and security for the future. We've been investing, for instance, in irrigation for the past 6-7 years. Irrigation is going to help us to really be not only the food bowl of the nation, but potentially the food bowl in this Asian century as well. We've had to go through some restructuring of other major industries like forestry, which has been forced upon us by changes in international markets and consumer behaviour. So we've had some difficult times, but I believe that we're starting to turn that corner and we're starting to see the economy improving.
So I gather if you're putting a lot of store in irrigation, that you believe that premium agriculture is part of Tasmania's future growth story. What about other things such as tourism and education? Are they going to be sources of growth for you?
Absolutely. In fact, we're very pleased to have had the recent Deloitte's report that came out and said that Tasmania's future looks really strong. They talked about the 5 super areas that will see economic growth in the future, and Tasmania is well positioned in 4 of those 5, which include in tourism, agriculture, also within the wealth management sector, the service industry sector in that respect, and in education. So we believe that there's a lot we can do in providing support to the emerging nations in Asia. I've been on trade missions to China and to Indonesia, supporting that growth in international education, for instance. And with tourism, we are a tourism icon of Australia. And more importantly, with some of the cultural tourism that's now coming because of Mona, that is quite substantial. We've also got investment in other premium tourism experiences, such as in Barnbougle and Lost Farm, which now are within the top 100 golf courses of the world. So there is certainly strength there too. In agriculture, irrigation is the basis of that, but we're doubling our dairy industry. We're doubling our aquaculture industry. In fact, our aquaculture industry is struggling to keep up with domestic demand, let alone international demand. And we're also on a pathway of quadrupling our wine industry. We're known for our cool climate wines, and we believe we've got a very strong future here too. But it must be sustainable growth, consistent growth over a period of time, because what we don't want to do is damage the quality or the price that we're able to get for good quality Tasmanian wines by having an overglut in the market.
Are you also a bit worried about the NBN? Tasmania was going to be at the forefront of the NBN under the previous government, but are you worried that you're going to miss out now?
I am concerned about the future of the NBN, and particularly concerned that it could be a lost opportunity to a regional economy like Tasmania's, where we can break down the barriers of geography through a digital age. And the best form of infrastructure to have in place is optic fibre to people's homes. I know of people who are lawyers in senior firms in Sydney who've been able to do their work from Tasmania and indeed from Hobart. I know of engineering firms here in Hobart who are doing the work for the mining industry in Western Australia. Indeed, we've got companies like Blue Rocket who are involved in our animation industries that are working with companies in India. Now that's because of good access to broadband. That's in the heart of the CBD of Hobart, where we have optic fibre to many of these businesses. But that experience could be expanded across the state, getting rid of any geographical barriers if we get the right infrastructure in place.
And you mentioned manufacturing before, but manufacturing obviously has been in decline in Tasmania. What can you do, given the size of your budget and the state itself, what can you do to support manufacturing? And also, what sort of manufacturing do you think Tasmania can engage in the future?
Well, there's a number of issues there. Firstly, with our major industrials that are involved, we have been working with them to drive down their input costs to try to make them more competitive in the global market. So in energy, for instance, if we can assist there, we have tried to drive down energy costs to keep those jobs here in Tasmania. We were disappointed to see Caterpillar recently talk about moving 200 jobs from the northwest coast to Thailand. I don't believe there's much we could do now to keep those jobs here in Tasmania. What is important, though, is that we look at where our niches are, and we do have some really talented people here in Tasmania who are manufacturing products that continue to gain demand or to grow demand around the globe and maintain their price. A prime example of this is Life Raft Systems, for instance, which has found itself a niche market and has not felt the after effects of the global financial crisis. So we just need to be cleverer about where we manufacture, what we're manufacturing, and ensure that we can be part of that global community on a competitive level where it's obvious in some older manufacturing sectors we're not competitive anymore.
And you recently doubled the first home buyers grant to $30,000, I think. Are you trying to attract first home buyers from around the rest of the country?
I would love to see first home buyers from other parts of the country come to Tasmania. We have some of the best lifestyle conditions in the whole of Australia, a beautiful place to live. And certainly, as I said earlier, with the right technology in place, you can bring your job with you. And there's nothing quite like living in an environment with clean air, clean water, beautiful beaches, beautiful rainforest on your back doorstep and so on. So absolutely, I'd hope that first home builders would want to consider Tasmania as a place to live and work. But we saw this as absolutely critical to help jobs in our construction industry. As you noted earlier, Tasmania's economy is still in a weakened state. We do have unemployment at 8.2%, which is still too high. We need to create jobs, and one way of doing that, of course, is to stimulate that building industry. So it is the most generous now of the grants out there. I think the closest is Northern Territory with some $24,000 available, and it will only be in place until the end of next year. It is really a public policy decision to drive jobs at a time where we need them created.
I presume it's got to be your first home full stop, not just your first Tasmanian home.
It has to be your first home full stop in line with the eligibility criteria that are part of the $7,000 that the Commonwealth actually contribute to it.
Your power sharing arrangement with the Greens has been causing ructions in your party. Would you continue to deal with the Greens and have the deal with the Greens at the next state election?
What we did in 2010 was to accept the will of the Tasmanian people who elected a minority parliament. And the caucus, the Labor Party caucus at that time, took the decision to go into coalition with the Greens to provide stable government. And that's what we've delivered. We've delivered a government that's also been very much one that has been concerned about the fiscal arrangements in this state, and we have been strong financial managers, backed up by the likes of Standard & Poor's, who have noted that in their credit rating reports. What happens after the next election will be a matter for the Labor Party caucus that is elected after the next election. What I will be doing, of course, is going into the election wanting to see a Labor majority government elected. It's natural, Alan, that you have faith and belief in your own policies, and I do. I believe the Labor Party is the best party to be in government in our own right.
But is it realistic to expect that?
I believe it is. And in Hare Clark, you never know, of course. We have a very different electoral system to much of Australia. And also there's a long time in politics between now and an election which will be held sometime in March of next year. And you can see with the experience in federal politics as we speak how quickly sentiment can turn around. And what we're seeing now with Tony Abbott in power nationally is exactly what the Liberal Party does when it's in power. We're already seeing jobs threatened here in Tasmania with cuts proposed by the federal Liberal government.
It's been great talking to you, Lara Giddings. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alan.